A warm September afternoon greeting to everyone. This is the third major event in our year-long recognition of 30 years of the Women's Leadership and Resource Center. Under the theme, Centering Care and Community, 30 Years of Resistance at the WLRC, we're also recognizing the 30 years of providing social, financial, and political support for survivors of gender-based violence here on this campus through the work of the Campus Advocacy Network. Indeed, many of you come to know WLRC through the work of CAN. It's actually not unusual for women's centers to offer programs that educate the campus about gender-based violence, and particularly sexual assault, and to provide some social support for survivors. But from the beginning, CAN has set itself apart by remaining an integral part of the center, as well as retained its critical feminist focus on the key role that community plays in the success of advocacy and prevention work. Neither of those things are true for many campuses, and that's really how we come to be here today. And I'll say something a little bit more about that. So today's event is the culmination of many months of conversations and strategizing about how to best anchor the work of making UIC a survivor-centered campus. What do we mean by survivor-centered? Well, it means that there's a broad and shared awareness that gender-based violence is part of the everyday lives of faculty, staff, and students, and that we face that reality head on. We know and hear the statistics repeated every Domestic Violence and Awareness Month, so I won't repeat them here. But what I want to say is that being survivor-centered means that our shared consciousness about the pervasiveness of gender-based violence is going to show up in how we relate to each other, in our programs, in our pedagogical work, in the way that we run our units. It's also going to show up in how we act as resources for each other, how we push back when there's violation of that core commitment. This is work that goes far beyond compliance with federal laws and goes to the heart of our notion of community, care, and of academic success at this university. And so CAN's work rests in bringing community together, and that's all of you who are here today, and leading the way in building those shared approaches and vocabulary, and helping everyone tell the story about how we continue to do the work to build healthy alliances that can get us closer to that vision of being a survivor-centered campus. And so in all of that, I want to say a special thank you to Dr. Ada Cheng for having done incredible groundwork to nurture today's conversation into being. Ada Cheng has championed this work, and in coming back today to moderate this program, I take this to mean that this is part of her ongoing commitment in helping us see this work through in whatever forms that it takes in the months and years ahead. So I want to say welcome to all of you, and thank you for being here. And we look forward to this conversation about what it means to be unlikely alliances in the work against gender-based violence on this campus. All right, who's next?
Thank you, Dr. Bennett. I'm Kelly Maganon, I'm the Assistant Director of CAN. I use she, her, and hers pronouns. I'm just going to introduce our speakers for today. So our conversation today will be a moderated discussion led by Dr. Ada Cheng, after which there'll be a chance for audience question and answer. So feel free to put questions in the chat as we talk. And then at the end, we'll share some resources. So as Dr. Bennett mentioned, today's conversation would be impossible without Dr. Ada Cheng. Dr. Cheng is an educator turned artist, storyteller, and creator who utilizes storytelling to illustrate structural inequities, raise critical awareness, and build intimate communities. Committed to amplifying and uplifting marginalized voices, she has created numerous storytelling platforms for BIPOC and LGBTQIA community members to tell difficult and vulnerable stories. Because of her artistic and intellectual work, she has recently been named the Educator of the Year by the 7th Congressional District's Multi-Ethnic Task Force and the American Multi-Ethnic Coalition. She was a tenured professor in sociology at DePaul from 2001 to 2016 when she resigned to pursue performance and storytelling. And in 2021, she has already delivered keynotes for Chicago Cultural Alliance's Activating Heritage Conference, AAPI Heritage Month at Dominican University, and AAPI Heritage Month at Environmental Protection Agency. She'll be the keynote at the Immigrants in Our Midst conference in October. And she also recently served in the signature event for the 3rd annual Cook County Racial Equity Week in September. And you can find that on YouTube. So hopefully we can share that in the chat. It's a beautiful talk. So Dr. Chang will lead us in a conversation with 5 of UIC's, of CAN's community partners. Amanda Grant, who is academic advisor for the School of Art and Art History at the UIC College of Architecture, Design, and the Arts. Diana Soriano, who's Assistant Director of Advising and Retention for UIC College of Business. Elsa Soto, who's the Associate Director of Women in Engineering Programs, or WIEP, in the College of Engineering. Kevin Kane, who's Director of Fraternity and Sorority Life. And Shantae Durham-Wiersema, who's the Director of Student Affairs, Diversity and Inclusion at UIC College of Business. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm excited to hear all of your insights.
Oh, thank you so much, Kelly. And Natalie, thank you so much for the introduction. I thought I was only committed to today's session. I didn't know there was a continued commitment for the rest of my life. Thank you so much for saying that. I appreciate that. That was such a beautiful introduction from Natalie and also from Kelly. I appreciate that. So today, let me kind of lay out what we're going to do. We're going to have conversation with our panelists. There will be 4 questions and then 15 minutes each, roughly. And so, and then if you have questions, feel free to simply put on in the chat, and then Kelly will ask questions if it's within the time. If not, we're going to, toward the end, we're going to have time for questions. And so the questions, so today, what we're going to do for those of you who may be new to CAN's work, think about these folks are people that I have worked with. Some I'm new to them, but these are folks that are wonderful collaborators, but also I want to say co-conspirators, where it is important for us to think about the institutionalization of survivor center spaces and advocacy, and they have been doing a wonderful job. And so part of this conversation is for them to model for us in terms of how they have been collaborating with CAN, WRC, and the challenges and obstacles, and also the rewards that they have been having. So here's the first question. What is your unit approach to violence prevention, education, and survivor support? And there are some specific questions, so panelists, you can answer all of them, or you can pick one to specifically address them. For example, how do you define survivor support in your unit? And how do you support survivors within your own unit in your own work? And how do you integrate anti-violence advocacy within your broader work? So I'm just going to randomly pick somebody, and then we'll go around and to have the conversation. So Kevin, I'm going to start with you, since we have been collaborating before I left this position. We are probably one of the closest collaborators, not only on campus, also beyond campus as well in conference presentations. So I want to start with you. How do you integrate, how do you define survivor support advocacy? How do you build that within your own broader work for the fraternity and sororities? Go ahead, Kevin.
Thanks, Ada, so much. And I hope everybody can hear okay. I've got a little bit of I don't know what this seasonal thing is, but I sounded different to myself in my ears, so I'll do my best. So again, Kevin Kane, I use he, him, and his pronouns, and I serve as the Director of Fraternity and Sorority Life here on campus. That includes advising 30 different fraternities and sororities, which are registered student organizations on campus, and guiding them through their mission-driven approach to make sure that they are excelling in the academic arena, that they are champions of diversity, equity, and inclusion, they're supporting civic engagement and our lifelong learners in development, making sure that they have a healthy and supportive, safe environment in which to enrich the campus experience, right? They're supposed to be role models for the campus engagement experience. And so given that that is the crux of their own pillars of how their organizations were constructed, the first thing we do to bluntly answer the question is that when we're talking about safety, and we're talking about a healthy environment, and we're talking about advocacy and support, we name it. We really do name it. If you do not outrightly say, we are here as a space that will invite you in and say that this is a space that is meant to be free of harm. And if harm were to occur, because we know that it does, we also have to name that we have incidents on this campus of fraternity and sorority organizations having those charges, and there are perpetrators in those organizations. We can't shy away from that we name that too and say, while that has occurred and we are working diligently to eradicate that and make it a safe space, there must always be survivor support at the same time. That while these harmful moments can occur in our community, that for a community of over 800 students, we are here to listen, we are here to believe, and we are here to support the survivors going forward. It's much easier to state that and say, okay, we're done because we've named it, right? And so there's certainly more embedded in that besides naming it, but we have to start there. I think after that, as a unit that may seem as one of the, that's quite interesting that they're on the unlikely alliances panel today, because folks will outrightly say fraternity and sorority life, maybe they would automatically shy away from the WLRC or CAN on not just the UIC space or any campus space. We take that moment to lean in. That's another way of advocating for that broadly in our area, is we lean in and say, we kind of want to have folks asking, how do you do that? How do you do that more? We're not saying that we're the best at it. We're saying that we're open to learning. We're saying that we're open to doing better. We're saying that we know that these things occur in our community, but when we lean in to be part of the conversation, we can be stronger. We'd be kidding ourselves to say that just by coming to a panel every so often, or having a couple collaborative workshops a couple times a semester, that we've done our job. It needs to be a continual part of the rebirth and the renewal and the refreshment of the education so that our students can be active agents of change. And I think the third piece here, and then I'll move on and definitely let some other great folks answer the first question, is that we listen very carefully and astutely to the student body, which is continually refreshing and recycling itself on campus. There is an interesting adage in the fraternity and sorority world that at about every 4 to 6 years, your entire organization turns over. That could be true for any group or team, not just student organizations, not just fraternity and sorority life. That's probably true amongst our staff, right? And all of our units that are represented here, that every couple of years, there's a lot of turnover. And so we're really attentive to that at any given moment, our organizations are new. As we share more information and we bring in new members, we have to be listening to what's happening for them and in their lives and in their communities. And I'll probably bring this up in a couple more of the second, third, and fourth questions later, is that we listen very carefully to what the students are saying is important to them. They are coming to us, unfortunately, having experienced harm and unsafe environments in their middle school and high school age time, and before they even arrive onto the campus. Then they come to the campus having experienced some of this, and they're looking to join a fraternity or sorority that we tell them is going to be a safe space. And when they understand there's still treacherous areas to walk on this campus, literally and figuratively, and trying to find that safe space, they will tell us that their stories need to be amplified. And so we listen to them and we amplify them. They will tell us that these certain de rigueur trainings that must be completed in order to stay enrolled are not enough to learn, and that there must be spaces for them to gather and to speak up. And so we allow them to gather, to construct those spaces and to speak up. And then we ask them time and time again in a needs assessment afterwards, how were those spaces for you? What was heard? What was not heard? What do we need to do more of? And we allow them to be co-designers of the future spaces. As we understand that we can't just be heavy-handed as staff members and say, these are the programs that you need to go to. These are the trainings, because we know it all, because we don't. We are both teachers and learners all at once, and we are learning from the student stories that they bring in beautifully to this campus environment every year. We allow their stories to be the next generation of the education and the next generation of advocacy going forward. So those are our core areas in fraternity and sorority life, and I really look forward to hearing from my other colleagues who are doing some truly remarkable work in all of their arenas on campus as well.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And two things that you mentioned are really important for us to think about. One is safety is defined very differently by different people on campus. So it is very important for us not to homogenize the definition of safety and really truly listen to students and staff and faculty members' perspectives. The second thing, what you mentioned is really important, is that there's no one size fit all in terms of prevention education, that you do have to modify to fit the needs of individual unit. And that's an important conversation to have with Ken. That is, what's your specific need? What is your demographic? How do they handle what's the environment? And every bit of our collaboration, and I bet Kevin is going to talk more, is based on that, suit the specific needs that fraternity and sorority have. And Elsa, I'm going to turn to you, talking about the different definition of safety, and you're working with Women in Engineering program, and we have collaborated a few times, and I'm going to have you answer the question. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Jang, and thank you, WLRC and CAN, for having us today. This is such an important topic, and I'm happy to be a part of it. So hi, everyone. Once again, my name is Elsa Soto. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I am the Associate Director of Women in Engineering Programs in the College of Engineering. And just to give you really quickly some background information on what we do, basically we focus on the recruitment and retention of women and female identified students. I do want to clarify that we work with students regardless of gender identity, so anyone can come and seek our services, but our programs and resources do address the fact that women make up a small percentage of computer scientists and engineers, and is the only public institution in the city of Chicago that offers accredited degrees in engineering. It is our responsibility to try to make a difference and move the needle. So we've developed pipeline programs to work with students as early as the 9th grade, and if they choose to attend UIC, then we support them in every sense to ensure that they're successful academically and professionally. So through our efforts, we hope to help students identify with the field of engineering and help them understand why diversity is so important for the development of new technology. But we also provide a safe space for them to connect with others who have similar interests and experiences. And as we all know, some of these experiences are not very positive. Unfortunately, given the fact that computer science and engineering are male dominated and are also very competitive professions, many of our students have experienced gender discrimination and or harassment. And this is not to say that other genders do not experience it, but the vast majority of students who have shared these negative experiences with me identify as female. So when this happens, we react immediately and we respond first and foremost by letting them know that we are here to support them, to hear them, to believe them, and to help them, as much as possible. And honestly, we're only able to do that because we have partnerships with WLRC and CAN. They always make the survivor a priority, but they also support advocates like me to better understand the situation and ensure that I am doing all that I can to immediately address the issue and support the individual. So this said, I firmly believe that violence prevention efforts are maximized when we collaborate within and beyond our campus community. And what I mean by this is that we shouldn't solely depend on the default services that are provided by the university. We need to be more intentional in seeking collaborations and partnerships to strengthen our efforts to prevent and to support. And I think bottom line, collaboration is key. to building a safer and more positive culture that does not tolerate any form of violence against women and other genders. And honestly, I may not have as much experience as some of my colleagues here today, but I'm excited to be here to learn and to see what other units are doing to bring more awareness and provide members of our EYC community the support that they need.
Thank you, Elsa. It is so, one thing that you talk about is so important for us not to simply preach to the choir, right? And so one thing that's really important when I was here, it's really about reaching out beyond what we used to, the units that we used to work with. We got to go beyond units, schools, colleges, and offices that may not have enough resources or incentive or knowledge to do gender-based violence prevention work. And I want to go to Amanda. And so I did a presentation with DACA, and also last year, it was great that DACA actually had members of the CAN staff members to go to classes for the first year classes. And so I want you to go ahead and talk about, answer the questions. Go ahead, Amanda.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Amanda Grant. I'm the academic advisor in the School of Art and Art History in Cotta College of Architecture, Design, and the Arts. So I advise for the art major, art history, art education, and interdisciplinary education in the arts. I'm also the coordinator and one of the instructors for our first year seminar that Dr. Ada Chang just mentioned, and I'm sure we'll touch on that a little later in the panel. In terms of how I see our unit supporting students and survivors, I see us as advisors as being frontline people that maybe students might disclose to or share information about a situation that they have. And for us as advisors, it's important to, number one, be up to date on what our responsibilities are as advisors in terms of being mandated reporters and disclosing that to students and having them understand we're not a confidential person or office to report to, and so that we can refer them to confidential offices to report to, such as CAN or a counseling center if needed. So I always want to make sure students understand that, while also making them feel like they still can feel comfortable talking to me. You know, I think that if somebody has chosen to come to me already, they're showing that they have a certain level of trust. So I would never want to do anything to push that away or make that student feel like it was a mistake to disclose anything to me. I think so, knowing about what referrals are offered that I can offer on campus, such as CAN or a counseling center, the Title IX coordinator, as well as off campus. So within our office, we do have a community resource guide that was adapted from a previous position that I had in the Dean of Students office at DePaul University. And that guide includes mental health providers, as well as resources that are specific to sexual assault or domestic violence survivors. So those are community resources. So sometimes I know students find it difficult to get an appointment at the counseling center, or they don't necessarily want to involve the campus with the situation. So by providing community resources, that's another way that students can seek support and help. And then I also think that as advisors, we're uniquely positioned to advocate for students with faculty members, obviously not sharing any private details or anything about a situation of a student with an instructor. But if we are aware of something going on, it helps a lot of the time for us to say something proactively to the instructor about why the students missed class or why they might be late on assignments. Again, keeping in mind the privacy, but I think the advocacy part is also very important for us as advisors.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I mean, I want you to sort of connect your words back to what Elsa earlier was talking about. You know, when we think about beyond compliance, really it's about encouraging staff and faculty and members not to simply follow rules and then delegate everything to CAN, but there got to be some effort from local, meaning individual unit, to really think through and strategize what it means to create survivor-centered spaces and to engage survivor-centered practices. It's not easy, but it can be done. And so just remember, after this conversation, talk to Dr. Maginot, strategizing what you can do for your unit. I want to come to Jana and Shante. You both are from business school. Talk about, please respond to this question. I'm going to go with Jana first.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Diana Soriano, and I also work at the College of Business Administration. I currently serve as Assistant Director of Advising and Retention. And so in the work that I do within our unit, it's in student services, is to support students and also work with our advising team to be knowledgeable of campus resources that are accessible at the university. And I was jotting down some notes from my colleagues here of things that they mentioned as it relates to gender-based violence and how we support our students here at the university. And I absolutely agree with their recommendations and their view in terms of supporting students here. And some different comments that I just want to add on here is that for our unit works with our university College of Business students in advising. And what I like to pride myself with is that our advising team is very knowledgeable and they support our students, not from the time that they hit the university campus, that they hit the ground running in their first semester, but even before then. Our team works very closely with our recruitment team within UIC Business to help recruit students so they participate in presenting to students. And as soon as they become UIC students, we connect with them in advising to review their academic plan and what their academic goals are. And so I just want to give that context because our advisors pride themselves in getting to know our students, not only from day one, but as they continue throughout their career journey and academic journey, because their goals may change. And so it is really beyond a prescriptive appointment where students are meeting with an advisor to get a schedule. They have very meaningful and deep conversations and build those interpersonal relationships. And I really pride myself in that and working in a unit that centers students as people because we genuinely have empathy for our students. And when we ask that question on how we can support our students, it looks very different for advising. Just to add on to what Amanda's saying is that our advising team is actively listening to students. They are empathetic of student concerns. And more importantly, depending on the situation, they're going to refer students out to resources, but also make sure that they know that their experiences are validated, that they know that what happened to them is not right, that it's not acceptable. And validate those experiences. And instead of asking why questions, just asking how can we support you at the university? I think that is critical. It's important so that our students feel that we care about them beyond, just their classes, because I think that's the easy part of, advising units is to share with students what they need. But I think it goes beyond that in our advising unit. And in terms of violence in self, I just want to mention that it affects students, it affects faculty, and it also affects staff. Violence can happen to anyone. It doesn't discriminate. So violence is happening at the university and also off campus. And so when we come to the university, acknowledging our different identities, and also acknowledging that violence is real and it's a public health issue, I think it centers the conversation to think about our identities, not as student, faculty, and staff, but as people, to humanize our experiences, to support each other, because ultimately our goal is to support each other here and communicate that with students as well, to let them know it's unacceptable. And then in terms of some policies, I know that we're going to talk about this later. There are policies at the university that really flesh out that we at the university do not tolerate any sort of discrimination or sexual harassment. So I just wanted to add that there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deanna. My apology, I didn't pronounce your name correctly. It's one thing that two things that you mentioned are so important. Commitment, right? If you have commitment, you can figure out how to do things at a level that is really to meet the needs of students, staff, and faculty members. The other thing is that, value people, right? Not just students, staff, and faculty members, but also intersectional identities, whether it is race, gender, class, sexuality, right? We are human beings, right? Shantae, go ahead. I'm going to have you respond to the question.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Professor Chang. I appreciate that. And yes, Diana and I are both coming from the College of Business, and I am the Director of Student Affairs, Diversity and Inclusion in the college. And what we really try to do within our unit is we do a lot of work with leading the charge to, we're building a community in which people feel welcomed and affirmed in their various identities. And we have done that through a series of, we've had panel discussions within our college. We've had teach outs within the college and a lot of different programming to make sure that students are feeling welcomed in who they are. And I personally am very happy to be part of this conversation today, because one of the first things that I did when I was having conversations with Kelly about being a member on this panel is I went back to the leadership within our college and I asked many of the questions that she posed to the panel today. And what I discovered is that we still have a lot of work to do in the College of Business when it comes to being strategic about how we are integrating survivor support and anti-violence advocacy within our college. And so that's one of the things that I, as a part of this conversation, and even before today in conversations that I've had with Kelly, am committed to really integrating as a part of my work, seeing it as being very critical, and just even thinking about the things that you hear and see on the news, just all the time, right? And one of the things that we focus on in the College of Business is knowing that we are educating the business leaders of tomorrow, right? And for things to get better within our society, it is very important for us within our college to make sure that we are in educating students who have a heightened sense of awareness around these issues. So that's something that we are going to work on moving forward.
Thank you so much, Shantae, for there are two things I want to mention in terms of the importance of leadership, right? In terms of you have leadership that is committed, then there are a lot of things that we can mandate and to make things happen. The other thing is, part of when we do training with student leadership training, right? Training future student leaders or current student leaders on these issues, it's the same thing, right? It's about leadership. The other thing I want to emphasize, the short-term goal, sure, it's integrating gender-based violence in each office, in institutions and colleges and schools. But our ultimate goal is we got to make sure everyone's centered, right? Integrating is not enough. Let's make sure that it's part of the curriculum. We center that we really value survivor at the center of our care and advocacy. Now, I want to sort of ask the second question. That is, most of you have been collaborating with WNC. Can would you talk a little bit in terms of what are the specific projects, workshops, or panels, or events? We don't always have to do everything, but there are creative things that we can do to make sure that we engage in practice and education. I'm going to start with Elsa. What are the sort of events and workshops that you have done? Go ahead.
Sure, thank you. So we've collaborated with CAN a couple times, or a few times, I should say. Our most recent event was actually in the spring 2021 semester. We hosted a screening of Picture a Scientist, which is a documentary that sheds light on the sexual harassment that women in STEM experience. And to my surprise, I don't think the College of Engineering had ever hosted such an event in the past. And I think that already says a lot about the direction that we're going, and hopefully we will be going in the next, soon, I should say. But that was an incredible event because even though it was a film, it really encouraged people to start having, and when I say people, I mean specifically in the College of Engineering, it encouraged them to start having more conversations about what sexual harassment means and what discrimination looks like specifically for women and people of color in this field. And I thought that that was a great success, and we definitely want to continue having these conversations and hosting more events or workshops that will bring everyone, faculty, staff, and students to have these conversations. Through our outreach programs, we work primarily with high school students. Sometimes we work with even younger students in middle school. It's definitely our goal to start integrating or centering this topic in our curriculum. I will be honest and say that we need some guidance and we need support from units like CAN and WLRC to be effective and obviously do a good job. But we definitely always attempt to be open and transparent about some of the challenges that marginalized groups will face in a field like engineering or computer science. So we always make an effort to have these conversations during class, during activities, and encourage students to think of it as in a broader sense, and how this could ultimately also affect perhaps some of the decisions that they make moving forward in their career. So, but I am excited, again, that we've started this partnership with CAN and WLRC, and you know, for what's to come. I know that we'll definitely make some big strides and hopefully cultivate a culture that is much more positive and is open to having more of these conversations.
Thank you so much, Elsa. And the conversation, I also had conversation with student organizations, and it's so important. And what I find interesting is that there were students and staff and also faculty members. And when I reach out to faculty members and let's have more conversation and host beyond compliance conversation within your own department, no one wanted to follow. And I think, you know, when we talk about commitment, there's also the issue about be brave, have courage to really do the right thing. Faculty members might be concerned, they want to, they feel that they know they have to do something, right? But the thing is the lack of courage to do the right thing. So these type of conversation, I want to applaud you for being this really pioneering and bringing all this program to the program. Thank you so much. Amanda, how about you? What are the specific workshops or platforms and events that we have been collaborating?
So our most recent collaboration was fall 2020 when we invited CAN to present workshop about healthy relationships. Like, I know there are different topics you can ask for, and we chose to go with healthy relationships. And this was a workshop that we had during our ISA 100 first year seminar course. So this is a 1 credit, 1 time per week required first year seminar for all first year students in CADA. So not just School of Art and Art History, students in School of Architecture, School of Design, School of Theater and Music. So they all have different sections that are led by the respective advisors from those colleges. And then we invited CAN to come to, I believe, maybe week 5 or week 6 of our 8-week course to talk about the healthy relationships. And this was all virtual because at that time we were working completely remotely and teaching our class completely remotely. So that was something that we'd never done before, but I do think it was ultimately very successful. I think that was the first time we'd actually had CAN specifically come to our class, and I think just based on the feedback, written feedback we got from students after the class was over, when we give evaluations, they all really enjoyed that class specifically. They wanted more information. They also did share that some of the content might have been triggering to them and that maybe we should have given them a trigger warning. And so that was a learning experience. You know, this was specifically maybe about controlling aspects within a relationship or unhealthy relationship behaviors. And just that was triggering for some of the students. So I think it just shows how we have to be really sensitive and careful about the information we're presenting, because we don't know what experiences the students are bringing in, or even, other staff. But it was really, really great to have multiple different staff, I think, including you, Dr. Cheng, present that workshop last fall.
Thank you so much, Amanda. And I want to sort of remind people, if you're with specific department college, please invite Ken to do presentations for your first year program. If you see a need for your staff, faculty members, please contact us. And this is such a great collaboration, and it was completely blew our mind with 13 sessions. It's a lot, right? But here's also the thing, demand and supply. We're assuming that there's no demand on campus for this type of presentation. But the truth is, when you invited us to do 13 classes, that meant there are thousands, hundreds of classes that need us, right, to do presentations. So think about it. There is a demand, and we need to create it. So I want to thank you, Amanda, for that. Deanna and Shante, Deanna, go ahead and let's talk about what programs and projects that we have been collaborating.
Sure, I could take the lead here. I also just want to, thank you so much, Dr. Cheng, because I think that what you mentioned is critical in terms of reinforcing these wonderful cross collaborations across the university. And you're absolutely right. I think once, staff and faculty recognize the great work that is happening with WLRC and CAN, that those conversations and this dialogue will continue to increase. I think it's important that we welcome those opportunities. And in terms of the College of Business and how, we've been able to collaborate in the last, over a year now, it's been quite some time, is to offer specific programming in terms of prevention of violence. And the way that it has manifested within the College of Business has been to coordinate workshops throughout the semester. And so in my particular role, I do collaborate with faculty and also with different units on campus. And one of our popular programming opportunities that we had and that were led by Dr. Cheng was the Maintaining Healthy Relationships. And so this particular session was really great for students to learn about. In addition, we've also in the past have catered, and this is something that Dr. Cheng, would ask, is this okay if we tailor a workshop? And one of them, for instance, was going to be on maintaining healthy relationships. And that particular day, all of our students who attended were male identified. So Dr. Cheng suggests, can we talk about toxic masculinity in this dialogue? I think it's very important. I see you're smiling. You said, I think it's very important to bring this up and what it looks like for this room. I think this conversation is worth having because of the students that are here, and also ask for not only my approval, but also the students to say, this is a topic that, although is not the center of the topic, we'd like to discuss this as well. How do you all feel about this? And I think welcoming those suggestions really enriched the conversation and the dialogue that happened within that group. And so those are just examples of some programming that we've collaborated with, particularly with Dr. Cheng. And just to add, I think it also helps, regardless of which unit you're in, to certainly highlight some of these great resources and programming that's being offered through their unit. And so, within our college, we have a marketing department. And so we also, I do not manage it, but our marketing department manages a newsletter, which I'm really thankful for. And so within our college, we have the opportunity to highlight events. And so when we receive that information, and we also have other campus partners that will reach out. Can you share this with your students? And we'll add that to the sheet with all that relevant information. And some of the events that we've highlighted also that are offered through the Campus Advocacy Network in partnership with several Centers for Cultural Understanding and Social Change included the Shake It Up Beyond Compliance, the Survivor Center Advocacy and Praxis, and that is an event that we encourage students to attend. And also the Beyond Dating for Safe Friend Zone. And so these are examples of programming that, even if your unit is not directly collaborating with the Campus Advocacy Network or WLRC, that you could certainly highlight, especially if you have a marketing department, or if you are the marketing department within your unit, that you include that information, because students will value having the opportunity to know what is out there and hopefully attend these wonderful programs offered.
Thank you so much, Deanna. I think you meant speed dating. We came up with speed dating beyond friend zone. We use that sexy title for students too, because we think they will want to come to speed dating and then to learn about gender-based violence. So we trick students sometimes. Shantae, I'm going to have you talk about the collaboration and projects specifically.
Thank you, Dr. Chang. And Diana did a very beautiful job of kind of outlining the different collaborations that have happened within the College of Business with CAN. And so I will allow someone else to step in and have the space to share what they have done.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Kevin, it's your turn.
Hi, and thanks, Shantae. Sometimes my stories can go a little long, so you might want to take back the speaking token moments you gave me here. But I want to craft this,
Kevin.
right, in a quick storytelling model, which I think could be illustrative of the great storytelling techniques that Dr. Chang has brought to the fraternity and sorority community and brought to our collaboration. That the true essence of this question, or what are the collaborations, is that it's a moment where you have to own that we can't do it alone, that we absolutely need the talents, expertise, drive, energy, and commitment from the amazing, amazing staff at WLRC and CAN, and that if we just sit in that and not are just okay with it, but are really excited by the opportunity to learn as staff about how the value of collaboration can be important for us on staff, and to listen here. I'm rapidly taking notes from my other colleagues about neat video screenings and other programs here, that we're always going to take it to the next level and to be current and to be fresh. And so I'll take you back very quickly in the story of before my even arrival here to this campus. I was getting ready to interview here and starting, this is about 4 years ago, and I had been hinted that the fraternity and sorority community and the WLRC and CAN area had some rocky moments in the past. And to be able to work through that when I got to campus to make sure that it could kind of get back to steady state. And I thought that was interesting, to get back to steady state. And that was something that I wasn't interested. I was interested in making it something that could thrive. And that could really be a force for good, but that it couldn't happen overnight. And so in leaning into that, I said, well, what's actually happening here? And the baseline program and the relationship between fraternity and sorority life and the WLRC and CAN came out of federal act known as the Campus Sexual Violence Elimination Act, or Campus SAVE Act, which I believe was passed in 2013. If I got the date right or not, Dr. Bennett, please correct me, 2013, amending the Clery Act. And it required educational programming for students on campus. Many campuses may or may not have been doing educational programming for their students on this issue, but it certainly mandated it. And for a couple of years, as that programming had gotten underway, specifically in fraternity and sorority life, we had some of the members of the community, I've got to own, right? That's the community that I advise and support, that weren't too keen on the programming, that would come, perhaps dragging their feet, or if they would come and maybe enjoy part or some of it, may not have been the best advertisers to their fellow peers in the community to say, you're going to learn something from this, so I'm excited for you to go. They would just pass it off as, well, it's something that you need to go to. And that was not going to be enough for our community. Our community really needed to take a turn and say, this is something that, if we're building a healthy and safe community, we need to uplift the programming that's happening here, understand that it's truly in collaboration, and that if we are reliant upon this office to be really guiding us in a direction forward, the last thing we want to be doing is souring this relationship. We need to enhance this relationship. And so we started to look to new ways to make sure that it was not just a training. Right? It can't just be a training. It can't just be another workshop. It can't just be another session that you are required to go to. And that if you drag your feet to it and you finish it after 90 minutes, then you're good to go. It needs to be a part of who you are. It needs to be in your ethos of your organization. It needs to be something that you are excited to go to. And then after being a part of that experience, you help build and craft the next experience. And so over several years, right? It's not overnight. So I want to acknowledge that, not overnight, over several years of an evolution, and certainly in the last 2 years in particular, with Dr. Chang's leadership, taking a program that you know you want as a central focal point and that you want to offer routinely and say, this can be something really, really special, and transform it and to make it something that's really, really special. It's now led in a storytelling format by Dr. Chang, inviting students in to tell their stories, and for the space to be a space that the students take up. They take up and fill that space, and they get to honor their own lives and the lived experiences of themselves and others. So much so that a subpart of that question is, how have the collaborations been in our programs, and what did you do during COVID to pivot to them? Some of the most successful elements of the weekly storytelling programs, and yes, they're weekly, they're held every single Tuesday, 20 times a year, 10 times each semester, have been quite successful pivoting into the virtual space, where we made sure that instead of feeling maybe a little bit iffy about sitting next to someone in an in-person circle, you had the ability to come into a safer space on a screen, and at the time that felt good for you to be on that screen, that you could share in the storytelling circle. The weekly programs would change, just as some of my other colleagues had mentioned before, based on the needs of the students and what they were demanding, whether we do a toxic masculinity program that week, whether we do one on consent, whether we do one on bystander intervention, whether we do one on healthy relationships in general, whether we do one on just supporting one another in a student organization and how you can be someone to lean on and take that healthy relationship to the next level if an incident were to occur, and to center the needs of a fellow student organization member. To do that week after week in a safe and comfortable space has truly been the hallmark of the collaboration that keeps us going. But from that storytelling center, we spoke off, and we have been so inspired by the different collaborations that can come from that. When you allow students to tell their stories week after week, they will have more ideas, like raising their hand in the session and saying, Dr. Chang, can we meet offline next week and do a 1-hour program just for the students in our organization about understanding this from a leadership-based perspective? Or can we meet offline for a series of programs to talk more about being courageous in our acts? Because we feel good when we're talking about it here, but what if I were to need to act on this and to really help support someone in the moment? I might be a little trepidatious there. So how can we do that from a courageous perspective? Or I want to do this with a couple of my peers from a couple other student organizations that are really vibing and gelling with this and understand this philosophy. Can we do a sustainable book series over time? Or another idea might be, I think I'm a programmer at heart, and I really like learning from you on staff, and I see what you're doing with programming and design. Can I help come up with a series of programs and be a co-sponsor of the program itself and help with the planning and help with the marketing? The possibilities really are endless. So much so that when you understand the brilliance of the staff in WLRC and CAN, and they can help design and facilitate this many programs and more that I've tried to name here, and I promise I'll finish up here, that you can even go on a speaking circuit or go to different regional and national and international conferences and summits and workshop with the staff to describe your process, to describe the ups and downs and the pros and cons of collaborating, to describe the unlikely alliance that forms. And if that's up to a challenge that you want to take on as a unit, I inspire any of you all here that are part of that audience. The WLRC in CAN is one of the most fantastic offices that you'd be so glad to do that with, so that you can continue to pick up new and innovative ways to collaborate and let that unlikely alliance be even more likely in the future going forward.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I have to say something. I mean, I teach college students for 20 years. I never have any students who would say, hey, can we meet on a Friday evening? Can you do training for us? I want to go out and have fun. You want to do training on Friday afternoon, on Friday evening. That's unheard of. There's also, I remember with discussion, the first year I was here, I invited some fraternity members, and I was really hesitant. I say, hey, there are about 4 pages. Would you mind reading it? They showed up and they actually read it. That was unheard of. And so I have to commend all of you, particularly Kevin, and it's a great group of students who tonight I have a training at 6 o'clock, and students reach out to me and say they want to do training. That's beyond their classes. And to do that evening, that's unheard of. So I cannot get my students to read the text that I assign them for classes. And I have a great group of students from fraternity and sorority, so I appreciate that. Now, the third question is this. I know it is challenging, as Shante and all of you mentioned, right? It's difficult to integrate the knowledge about gender-based violence, the knowledge that you gain from collaboration with WRC and CAN. Talk about obstacles and bumps that you're getting into trying to integrate the knowledge that you gain from collaboration, or general obstacles that you're facing in your own department or unit. I'm going to just going to open up for anybody who wants to have a say, and go ahead. Who would like to go ahead?
I can jump in, and I could say that,
please do.
this is Shante from the College of Business. And as I kind of mentioned, thinking structurally within our college about these issues, it's been an area that we have not really given much thought to. And I think that for us has been kind of our primary obstacle, is just not really having a solid knowledge base about the importance of these types of issues at the structural level. And I do think that even my being a part of this panel discussion, it's pushing the college to really to think about these things and to ask those questions as to why are we not doing this. So I think that for us, that's definitely going to be a beginning of asking the questions, and then from there beginning to take that and build the knowledge, working with our partners across the university and beginning to strategize and to think critically about how we can incorporate this into the different pockets of all of the work that we do across our college.
Absolutely. And something I want to mention to check on Kevin earlier say, people don't just, we got to go beyond information. People don't just do the right thing because they have the right information. Otherwise, we would have solved all the social problems, right? So we got to look at the emotional level. What's preventing people from being committed to do this work? And that's one thing that is successful with fraternity and sorority students. How about other people? What obstacles that you have faced in bringing this work to your unit? Anyone want to jump in?
I can jump in.
Go ahead.
Amanda from CADA. I think a big obstacle that we all shared was the fact that during the pandemic, we had to be remote. Our office had never worked remotely before at all. So we're very student facing. That's like our main role, is meeting with students in person. So we really had to pivot and address all of that. And that included our first year seminar and having CAN present virtually. However, I think that was still really successful. I was worried that people wouldn't be as engaged. People keep their cameras off. You don't know if they're even paying attention. But I noticed in the chat for that workshop specifically with CAN and about the healthy relationships that people were talking, they were engaged, they wanted to know more. So I think that might have started out as a challenge, but it ended up being very successful. And, I hope in the future. Didn't work out for this semester due to scheduling, but I absolutely want to continue specifically with our first year seminars and having CAN come, because they may not be getting this information otherwise. And then the other thing that I think, I don't want to speak for all advisors in our college, but specifically for me, that I've noticed is that, to continue being educated and evolving with understanding people's gender expression and the pronouns they use and the names that they use, because we might have an idea in our head of what a survivor looks like or who perpetrated the violence against them, but that's not always the case. It's not always, a man assaulting a woman. It could be any number of types of people or gender expressions that experience this. So I think that is something that as a college and myself personally, that I continue to be aware of and continue to see this coming up more and more. And I don't know if that's just within our college or just overall college students are more comfortable with sharing different types of gender expression or different types of names and pronouns, but that's something I also think is important to be aware of, or a challenge that we're continuing to learn more about.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Go ahead. Yana, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I can also chime in here just to say that with the knowledge that that I have learned in particular with the partnership and collaboration with the Campus Advocacy Network, I think it is in my nature to think about undergraduate students. And so I think a challenge is how do we continue to educate professional staff and faculty? And I think the lines become a little bit more difficult there in terms of challenging, is it WLRC? Is it the Office of Access and Equity? I think that in itself is like a challenge to think about, okay, we need to be knowledgeable in terms of what resources are accessible, not only for students, but faculty and staff, because like I mentioned earlier, that violence can happen to any person. It's not exclusive to students. And so I think that is something that I grapple with, to think about, well, what resources do I need to know more about? Because between students, faculty, and staff, we might be that person that individual will go to. And that's why it's important and very critical that we validate their experience. We tell them that, that we believe them, and that we're there to support them. And that part in itself is going to manifest differently depending on what the issue is and what is the violence that they've experienced. And so I just bring that up because it's something that we need to, or I need to think more about. How do we connect these people, in a fluid way? Because I think we all have done that in the past or will be doing that, to connect professional staff and faculty to these resources. And another piece that I just wanted to chime in terms of serving our undergraduate student population, I feel the support from our administrative leadership in particular with providing programming related to not only preventing of gender-based violence, but specifically on wellness. And so one of the pieces that was inspiring from the dialogue is to think about how we internalize these experiences that we have. And so in the past, from maintaining healthy relationships, to me, it helped me to think about, well, how do we do harm to ourselves too? How can we be better about, changing the things that we can, but also thinking about our mental health and wellness. And so one of the programming opportunities that we also had the ability to coordinate with the counseling center really was wonderful on that complemented maintaining healthy relationships in terms of self-compassion and anxiety. And so that is another wonderful resource on campus that I don't think that workshop would have been possible, or that collaboration would not have been possible without thinking about maintaining healthy relationships and that dialogue. So I just want to thank you, Dr. Chang, for that, because it really challenged me to think about, well, how are we also internalizing this? And when do we take action? How do we become our own advocates? So thank you for that.
So important. A few things. And this is really in process. We started to have very specific questions with graduate students because, as I mentioned earlier, the violence prevention education cannot be one size fit all, right? It has to be very different. And part of the beyond compliance conversation with staff, faculty members really is to target the specific concerns and needs for different population on campus. So that's something very important. How do we have a cohesive curriculum that address the different needs of different population? And another thing, the wellness, that is not just about safety, not just anti-violence, but also what's our commitment to the overall welfare, well-being of people, right? So I want to thank you for mentioning that. Elsa or Shante, do you want to say anything, or Kevin, do you want to say anything about the obstacles that you face?
I guess I could just quickly add, it's not so much of an obstacle, but definitely a challenge. Something to what Diana alluded, is just working with faculty and encouraging them to incorporate and implement these types of conversations in their own classes, and to be consistent with it as well. It takes more than just a film screening or a workshop, to Kevin's point earlier. There has to be more, and it's going to take time, and it's not going to happen overnight. We understand that, but we also need the support of other members of our college and the university. And it shouldn't just be on one office or a particular unit in that particular college or department. Everyone, I think there needs to be buy-in from everyone. And I think that's where the challenge is for me, to encourage my colleagues, faculty, and staff to also incorporate these types of programs or events to their classes or their programs overall.
Thank you
Briefly,
so much.
I love that. I was going to tag in. I'm sorry.
Kevin, go ahead.
I'll
Kevin,
tag
go
into
ahead.
that I'm so continually inspired by this group in the last hour, and I want to add some more co-collaborators and co-conspirators right after. So we'll stay on that. I want to admit a challenge that we had and how we overcame it a couple times. If I can just be blunt with everybody, including the attendees, that money comes up, right? It really does. And money in terms of the time and essence of the staff who are going to commit to it. So, the money of the staff, they could be bringing in a program, right? So in that respect, but also paying the staff to stay later or to commit to something, because committing to one program means maybe you're not committing to another program. And so I'm not saying we're perfect at it or we're the best, because we've made mistakes and had bumps in the past, but every time we've run into a budget issue, we've looked to our co-conspirators and said, like, let's not drop this program. Safety matters. We will find a way. Sometimes finding a way is a little bit here, a little bit there, add another colleague, split it 4 ways. I can't really say it any other way, but you find folks who commit in the way that it all matters. And when you don't neglect the safety program, but you can cut in some other areas where other programs probably are not as necessary or can be reformatted, you might actually find there's a new way to do it. I want to honor and thank current and former staff of the office that I've worked with, folks that we've contracted out. I see folks in the attendance here who have helped us out in so many different ways. And so maybe we're all thinking it, but that does matter. Budget matters, and time is money too. The time that you put into this, and so there's creative different ways that we all come from different leadership, and I know it's not a perfect line the way that you share, but each time we've had a little bit of a hurdle, I've been able to openly go and sit down with Dr. Bennett on a bench somewhere. We've done it in the lecture center and just looked at each other and be like, how will we do this? We will make it work. And again, that's like a blanket statement that maybe it doesn't work for every single program that you're doing here. But if you find a cohort of collaborators like this, or you want to lean on anybody here, please know that I'll jump into that arena with you. If it's something that you need a little bit more to get over the hump, find some friends that'll do that with you.
One thing that is so important, you touch on the issue of budget, right? That's sort of tied to Elsa's point about buy-in. You cannot be committed to equity and diversity and cut budget for the cultural centers. You cannot say you are committed to gender-based violence prevention without committing budget, or the Women's Leadership and Resource Center, the budget is where you're going to cut it, right? Budget is a way to show commitment. You cannot say you are going to show commitment and then asking us to move somewhere that survivors may have difficulty getting into. So I really appreciate, Kevin, that you mentioned this. Budget, where you cut it, how you cut it, is the way for the institution to show commitment. You cannot claim to have commitment on these issues, yet culture centers, Women's in Leadership and Resource Center is a place where you cut your budget. And again, that goes back to the chicken and egg, right? There is a demand because survivors' voices are silenced. So we treat it as if there's no demand. There is demand. So we got to sort of think through that issues. It's so connected. Now, the final thing is from where you are, how do you envision a violence-free UIC? What are you willing to commit yourself to do this coming year? This is a decades-long project. We're not going to force you to accomplish something tremendous within 1 year. This is decades-long, century-long project. But what are you willing to do this coming year? How do you envision a violence-free campus? I'm going to start with Shantae, and then we're going to go shortly, quickly go around the room, and I'm going to handle questions. Go ahead, Shantae.
Sure. As I was reflecting on this question, like for me personally, when I think about envisioning this, it's a broad campus and community engagement around this issue, I think is important. As we all know, our institution is very siloed, but I think when we're working on this issue, we have to work across those silos and work outside of our bubbles and come together as a unified institution to make changes around this issue. Because college should really feel like a very positive and empowered environment for everyone who attends, for our students, our faculty, and our staff. And I think that it's very important that we, again, integrate. The integration and the broad campus and community engagement, I think, is very important.
Thank you. Deanna, go ahead.
Thank you for that. Yes, in terms of thinking about this question, I grapple with it because it is a complex and challenging question just to think about eliminating violence altogether. I think that there's a lot of work to be done, and to share what Shantae is saying is absolutely accurate in terms of cross collaborations. And I really appreciate Kevin's point on the budget issue, because in order to do such work, there needs to be accountability and commitment from university leadership. As I was preparing for this panel, I was looking at the CDC resource and some infographic just on violence itself. And I just want to highlight this because it did come up as an infographic. And this is information on specifically the intimate partner violence, sexual violence, and stalking. And what I know about the most recent statistics that are shared on this particular government site is that 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men were victims of contact sexual violence, physical violence, and/or stalking by an intimate partner with a negative impact, such as injury, fear, concern for safety, needing services. So I just wanted to share that as a statistic, because this is only one piece. This is only one layer of many layers of violence that happen in real life. And so in terms of how we can get to eliminating, or what Kevin was saying, eradicating, is going to include commitment to programming. And there are so many examples about that. And so it really is going to be a university commitment to collaborate on these. And just also tying it to what Elsa is saying, I love that idea of thinking about how do we incorporate it within our curriculum, within different colleges or different courses. Is there currently a course that offers this? Is this an idea of a course that needs to be created at the university that might be a requirement? So I grapple with these. So I would propose I think this is a lot of heavy lifting, and it's going to take co-conspirators, agents of change, people that are empathetic and care and want to move forward with this. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you so much. You don't need to shoulder the whole world problems on your own, just one thing at a time. One thing that you mentioned is so important. invite us. Yes, this got to be part of your curriculum within business school. Please invite 10 people, right, to co-design this curriculum with you if you don't already have it, right? It shouldn't be just one-off presentation. It has to be consistent to all students and take some commitment, right? So we're forcing you to think about your commitment. Don't worry. All right, how about Elsa and Amanda and Kevin?
Thank you. Yes, so I agree with Diana 100%. I mean, obviously, I would like to envision a violence-free UIC where these preventative efforts are not needed, right? But obviously that may not happen. But I agree that incorporating these conversations in our classrooms, in our activities, maybe in our admission or when we hire staff and faculty is really, really important. I think we don't have to wait until something horrible happens or when we're dealing with a situation to talk about these issues. I think the best way to prevent it is to start talking about it as soon as people become part of our community. And if there's a way to have these conversations before, then even better. But I definitely think that we need to strengthen the activities and the training that everyone at UIC, regardless of who you are, has to do.
Thank you so much. And everyone, all the panelists are change makers. They are leaders within their own unit and university. They should be promoted and given a raise in terms of the work that they're doing. You see, I'm working so hard to promote these folks. Amanda and then Kevin.
Yeah, so I think when I reflected on this question, I thought about those notifications we get, like public safety notifications that tell us about incidents of sexual assault that happen and how we exist not in a bubble, like we're right in the middle of a large city. So that's another factor we have to think about and consider specifically with our students and how they might interact with other people in the community, and how, you know, it'd be great to not receive so many of those notifications. Obviously, that's a larger systemic problem. And then for me, my own personal commitment to, you know, keep understanding what my obligations are as a mandated reporter, what are the offices that I can refer students to, and the education piece that so many others have mentioned about how can we integrate this type of information so that all students are getting it, not just ones who are enrolled in a first-year seminar or who are in Greek life. How are we getting them this information on a large scale and not just the Title IX training? And I think specifically, I think Diana had brought up toxic masculinity as a topic for sure. I think that's very key for you know, all, especially the new incoming students to receive that information, as well as media and how that influences, you know, our perceptions of sexual assault and domestic violence. And, you know, we have many examples that we could look at, you know, of celebrities or famous people who are either being held accountable or not, and how that might affect students seeing that in the media. So those are the things I think about.
Very good. Amanda, thank you so much. Kevin, I'm going to give you 1 minute and we're going to move on to questions. Sorry about that.
No, it's good to give me some limits. I really want to pull from many of what my colleagues have just said. I was thinking the same, particularly when Diana mentioned ensuring our undergraduates, our graduates, our professional staff, our full-time staff, our faculty, my envisioning of a safe and healthy community as one that cares for all. It could be easy for us to just think of the small pockets. But if you feel safe coming to work, isn't that a good start? Instead of first thinking, how am I going to navigate through that parking lot? Should I stay later for that program? I've been asked to co-facilitate after the sun's gone down. I envision a space where we don't have to think of those tough questions to decide if we're going to come into work that day or leave safely in the evening. And in the other half of my response, I did want to say, that the commitment I'll make is to always, always, as I said in the intro, name what's going on and lean in even when it's tough. If you have or have not seen the news last night, or you'll continue to see it today, there have been 2 horrific incidents of violence on the Northwestern University campus. And I don't name them to say that we're absolving ourselves at UIC from that and we're pointing the finger at Northwestern, but we are a community and a family. These particular assaults, because they were assaults, they were non-consensual drugging of students on the Northwestern campus, or horrific. The way that they were not named and said they had occurred at a location up on Sheraton did not hold the 2 fraternities accountable in the way that I would hope that we would in our area if that happened here at UIC. And so when you don't name it, it allows for the survivors not to be centered, and it allows the perpetrators to get away with more. And so I envision in my commitment that I'll always be there, even when it's tough, to make sure that we name it and to center our survivors.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I want to raise a comment made to me directly in private message, and I'm not lying, okay? So this is from a graduate student. What kind of efforts exist in regards to making the sexual assault prevention training go beyond the online training sessions? And so as a graduate student, I know we need to take this every year, but it seems that we're making it as a checklist. And that's exactly the problem that we have, that we ask people to go through the training. And this is my experience. If you ask undergraduate students, they can hit every question right, blindly, without thinking. Without even I finish the question, they already know the answer. It's completely useless in that sense. We got to go beyond information training, but really looking at bravery, courage, and commitment. We would have solved problems, sexism, racism, homophobia, and transphobia, if it's all about right information. It never is. So Kelly, I'm going to give it back to you. I know you, are there questions that you would like to ask, or anyone, any questions from the audience?
I think, thank you so much for all these wonderful insights. I think you're leaving us all with a lot to think about. I guess I would say, is there any kind of one piece of advice that you think for units who haven't worked on these issues before? And you've already given us a lot of advice. Is there any kind of one last thing that you want to share that people who are coming into this work would benefit from knowing, being able to do, reading, thinking about?
Go ahead.
I would say just having empathy, because especially if you're student facing or working with students or being in situations where you're on one-on-one and someone might disclose something to you, to just have empathy and understand that you're not being asked to solve the problem. They're coming to you because they trust you and because they feel safe to talk to you. So, taking on that responsibility while, also maintaining whatever status you have as a mandated reporter, but not, pushing somebody away or just trying to refer them out without trying to hold space for them, and make them feel validated for coming to you. So I think that's something that I feel like advisors may be skilled at, but maybe faculty feel a little bit more apprehensive about. So yeah, I just encourage empathy and understanding.
Anyone else? Quickly, advice. Talk to us. Talk to these people here on the panels. They're pioneers within their unit. They're doing great work. Talk to them. Everyone is change maker. Anyone want to say something?
Dr. Jang, I just want to add that sometimes it's just as simple as asking the student or the staff, your colleague, if they're doing okay. How are they feeling in the spaces, in the spaces that they navigate at UIC? I think that unfortunately many people hesitate to open up because they feel like it's a complaint, and no one wants to hear about it. But once you sort of open that door and you allow them to see that you care, that you're empathetic, and you want them to be in a safe environment, then they will share. And I think that will definitely help you understand that there's an issue there, and that person may not be the only one experiencing it, and that there are others, and obviously it needs to be addressed, and more change needs to obviously happen. Yeah.
Very good. One thing to think about, the starting point for our gender-based violence leadership training, the starting point is, what do you need if you're a survivor? That's always the starting point. And students can articulate what they need. And that's for us, staff, faculty members, or students, put ourselves in their shoes, right? Anyone else before I'm going to hand over to Kelly? One more comment.
There's a quick question that just came in the chat. If you don't mind jumping in, and I can too, about storytelling as a platform. If you're
go ahead,
with,
Kevin. Go ahead. Just go ahead.
The question from Monica was, and if other units have used it too, how did we initiate the storytelling program, and how did you get buy-in? In all complete transparency, we do rely on the collaborative brilliance of Dr. Chang in this situation, where we had invited students in first to a different storytelling experience that was in a large room here in Student Center East. I'm like pointing to it as if we're in the Student Center. For students to experience a variety of stories from different tellers. And afterwards, there was such a vibe in the room that students were running up to Dr. Chang and the tellers, trying to meet them and saying, wow, I really like that you were so open. I really like that you were so vulnerable. I've never been to a program like that. It didn't feel like a required training. It felt like I was experiencing something with you. That concept came back to adopt that and fold that into a weekly series of much smaller, intimate groups. We're talking 10 to 12 at a time instead of a large room. You can do large room storytelling, but you can also break it down to groups of 10 to 12, which is what we commit to and why we do it 20 times a semester. The buy-in really came ultimately from the students who felt comfortable in that original space, asked for it a little bit more, and each of the 20 weeks that we continue to do it, we pull from them what are the most salient topics that they want to talk about, so that the storytelling is not just, oh, I got roped into something this Tuesday that I wasn't even comfortable sharing with. It's something that was more topical for them in the moment, and then they lead the discussion, and we're just there to kind of move it around.
I think.
Can you hear me? Okay, Kelly, I go ahead, and I think we are, it's 4:30. I want to thank all the panelists. Gosh, time flies when you're together with good friends and chatting, but I'm all sweating trying to keep the timeline. I want to thank everybody, Kelly and Ramona and Natalie, everybody for inviting me back. So I'm going to give it back to Kelly. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much to Dr. Chang, Amanda, Diana, Elsa, Kevin, Shante. I'm also going to put some upcoming event information in the chat for WLRC, and you'll get an email with that information as well. I know we're coming to the end of our talk, so if you have to hop off, you'll still get access to the information. I want to especially spotlight, we have coming up this Friday, Women of Color Faculty Welcome Tea. Please check it out if you are a woman of color faculty, or if you want to share with colleagues. There's also a series of events coming up throughout the month of October, which is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, that'll center some of these questions about being beyond compliance. So please just stay in touch with us, follow us on social media, join our listserv, and you'll be up to date with everything that's coming from WLRC. And thank you so much to our wonderful panelists and moderator.